Okay, looks like we are live. Hello, everybody. Please send messages to make sure that everybody can hear me okay. Okay, just looking at the comments here. So it looks like we have 126 people that are live. I'm managing a bunch of different things here at the same time, so everybody can bear with me just for a moment. Okay, so we're live. Hello, all good, all good. Yeah, gotcha. Yes, Marcus, you sound great. Good. Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know me, I've done a lot of work with SynchroArts. I guess it's coming up to a decade now. My first introduction to Revoice Pro was, I believe, at the tail end of Revoice Pro 2, going into Revoice Pro 3. When I first started using it and I first started working with SynchroArts in terms of doing videos. That being said, I can recall having Vocaline Project going back to, I guess, it may have been one of my first Pro Tools rigs that a license came with that. So I've got a lot of experience working with SynchroArts products. I also do beta testing for the different products, and I've worked with the team for a while now. So one of the things that we have seen with Revoice is where Revoice used to be kind of like timing, and then we got some basic tuning and stuff like that, is now it has become kind of like this beast of a vocal production toolbox, if you will. And the way that I like to think about Revoice is in terms of this is the finisher. And what's great about it being a standalone application, this is a question that I get asked a lot. What's great about it being a standalone application is you have kind of like your first stage where you send everything over from your DAW, you get everything in, and you start doing the work, regardless of which DAW you're in. If you're in an ARA DAW or you're in Pro Tools or Logic or anything like that, you can send everything over and then take as much time as you need to get everything perfect. And then once you're happy with everything, maybe you need to have a meeting with clients or everything like that, finesse every single detail, then we send everything back, and then you can render those results and then you move on. So for me, this has always been that, but in this version now, and even in version 4, but now where we are at this point with having some of these new tools that we have, which if you're familiar with Repitch, a lot of these are going to seem familiar with to you. This has just become even better, at least for me personally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at some of these comments here, and then I want to go into kind of like some of the new changes that we have. We have some different examples. I have a basic structure, which I'm going to try to follow. These live streams I find are particularly hard because I'm monitoring the questions and there's some feedback coming directly from Jordan and everything like that. So, but I'm going to try my best to show everything that's new, show you guys potentially where this differs from some of the other products, some really cool workflows that you can do, obviously the results, and kind of make it like an in-depth video, getting started, walkthroughs, everything all in one. So that being said, I think we will probably start. Jordan, if you can confirm, send me a text. I'm going to try to be monitoring these the live chat in real time. That being said, it's really, really small. Okay, so I have a couple different Revoice Pro documents pulled up over here. Let me see which one we have. Let's start with this one. This is a really great example. So in this session over here, one of the first changes that we see, I'm gonna solo this track. Anytime that I'm working in Revoice, let me first make sure that you guys see my screen. That should be good. You guys should see my screen and you should see me in the corner. Anytime that I'm working in Revoice, okay, we have this little button. This is going to be your best friend for anything timing or tuning related. Now, T key and R key, this has kind of been drilled into my head for a while, especially working with Pro Tools, but one of my favorite things with this new version is we have some dynamic zooming abilities, and we have click, hold, drag to reposition. So if you hold Option, Command, Alt, Control on a PC, we can click, hold, and we can dynamically zoom our waveform or our audio so that we can have this, fit to the screen however which way we want. Another thing that we can do is Shift Command. We can click, hold, and drag to reposition. Then, of course, you can also use the T key and the R key as well, but these just give us a different way that we can zoom. Now, I'm going to just reposition my picture-in-picture here for a moment. Also, if you head to the audio tab, if you want to make any adjustments to the actual vertical height of your waveforms, I typically like these to be somewhere where they're around the same size as the pitch block. This is something that we can do either with this slider or the same modifiers, Option Command. We can click, hold, and drag, and this will allow us to adjust the height. So generally what I do is I like to find a place that this kind of feels comfortable visually. And then at this point, I like to have it so that the average waveform kind of sits behind the pitch block in a top to bottom. What this allows you to do is it's a really good telltale for anything that's maybe needs to be adjusted in terms of level. They tend to pop out. So that's just a little kind of like a bonus tip. I'm going to bring this back now. One of the main differences that we see is obviously we have this newly updated GUI, and this is something that for me makes a big difference, is that the pitch blocks are tied to the waveforms now. We used to have a waveform that was right across from left to right, and then the pitches were actually separate. They would kind of float on top of the screen, if you will, and they would be kind of like disconnected. In this case, I find this a lot easier to work with. Now also, if you hover your cursor over any one of these, right over here, so this one for example, let's zoom into this section. These are called control points, and what these offer is kind of like a different approach or a unique way that we can make adjustments to our tuning. So if I go to this one right over here, if we hover our cursor in the middle, if we click, hold, and drag, we have the ability to adjust our level. So we can either decrease this or we could increase this. And this is something that you can do kind of like while you're tuning. So I mentioned that for this section over here, if I wanted to be adjusting the level, because keep in mind, I'm looking at a consolidated performance here, but this might be something that has been comped together from 3 different takes or 4 different takes. So when we're playing, get a little drunk always, that note there, that pops out a little bit too much to me. It's very easy to just hover our mouse cursor, and also I'll just bring that down a couple dB. This one looks like it might be okay. And then also another tip, anytime you want to have a quick before and after, the comma key, this will bypass everything. And then if we bring the comma key back in, so we can make level changes while we're kind of like working through things. Now, in addition to level changes, obviously we have some other control points that allow us to do some other things. So let's dive in here again. On the left side over here, we have drift. This is good for just kind of massaging a longer passage. You can see this pitch trace. We can kind of like smoothen this out and make this so that if it's tilted one way too much, and this is just from mouse hovering in this corner. And then last but not least, we have this one over here. If we hover our cursor, we have a correction amount. So if I hover my cursor, I can dial this all the way up to 100, or we can dial it all the way down to 0. Now, 0 would be no tuning applied whatsoever. And then if we dial this up to 100, this would be tuning this according to 100%. But keep in mind, this would be, if we were taking a first pass at a vocal, this would be according to like the nearest semitone in terms of where the actual vocal was performed. So those are 3 main changes, and we have the ability to just hover our mouse cursor and we can use these as needed. So they're a really great way that we can have like manual tuning control, but we have the convenience of having automated features. I'm going to try to look over here, see if there's any comments that are coming in real time. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. So that's good. Now, in addition to that, I'll tell you what my plan is here. We're taking a look at like a vocal that's like kind of completed. I want to show the new features, and then we're going to peel back to something that's raw, and we'll go through how we could use these features in real time. And then maybe I can just suggest some different workflows and things like that. So in addition to that, let's zoom in on this one over here. There is a new feature that we have in Revoice Pro 5, which comes from Repitch. We can right click, and this is called the Shaper tool. Now, for anybody who's never used Repitch, the Shaper tool is a completely unique way that we can approach vocal tuning. I think what I'll probably do though is let's use it on this. In fact, I've already used this a little bit. What this allows you to do is the default behavior is that one single click will add multiple points. Once you have these points added, then we can adjust the actual pitch trace, and we can do this in kind of like a really smooth and transparent way. So if I wanted to not have to cut up this individual pitch trace or this pitch block into multiple pieces, then we can just add these points. And when we add these points, notice that it just kind of adds these nodes. These nodes, once we have these nodes in place, we can just massage everything into place. And also you can highlight across multiple nodes and hold the alter option modifier. And you can bring everything kind of up and down. So in previous pitch correction software, and things like any pitch correction software really, we had to actually switch over to a cut tool. And then we'd have to split this into multiple different sections. And then you'd have to move each one of those sections, and then you'd have to worry about, can I get these to stitch back together and sound like a smooth result? So this is what the Shaper tool aims to solve. It aims to solve this issue that we have. And you can click, hold, and drag any of these points. And then if you, as long as you hold the alter option modifier, you can just reposition. And this gives you a really nice way to just be able to just massage different pitch traces back into sounding in tune when maybe you don't want to use the drift. And this can be used in a lot of different ways. We're going to take a look at different examples of this. Is this session recorded for later reference? Yes, it will be available for later reference. It will remain on the Synchro Arts YouTube channel. Are the algorithms different in Revoice Pro 5? The same as in Repitch? I'm going to let the folks from Synchro Arts answer any questions like that. I'm just going to try to kind of like plow through as much as I can here. So in addition to the Shaper tool, we also see an improvement with the Center Notes tool. So if I call up the Center Notes tool, I'm going to be doing a lot of right-clicking here instead of using the shortcuts because I want people to see exactly which tools that I'm using. So the Center Notes tool, for example, we have, in addition to the correction amount, which we can slide up, we also have a drift, and the drift can be used to adjust pitch traces that are longer. The one thing I will say about the drift, though, is that it really kind of only makes sense on stuff that is long. You can really see those changes happening in real time. Sometimes if you're looking at something that's really short, it might not necessarily display that as easily. So in terms of changes, like I said, we have our dynamic zooming, we have our different control points that we have the Shaper tool, we have a new GUI in terms of how we display things. Also, if we were to call up, let's go to another example just for a moment here. Let's see what I have. Creating vocal doubles, creating a match process. Also with the match process panel, this is something that's been improved as well. So if I call up the B key and I wanted to create a match process, for anybody who's an existing user of Revoice Pro, previous versions of Revoice Pro, so that would be anything from version 4.5 and going back all the way, we had a terminology that we called APT. Pardon me for 1 second. Now, in the new version of Revoice Pro 5, we are now just calling this a match process. So instead of audio performance transfer, it is now called a match process. So we can match timing, pitch, or level. So we have a brand new dialog box, a brand new process panel that comes up when we engage this key. So you can see over here, this is a lot more streamlined. It's been simplified because you can see that as we take these tracks, let's say, for example, this lead vocal, and I have this male vocal track, anytime that you call this up, it's automatically going to populate a guide track and a dub track. But if you're looking at anything where you're adding multiple instances of something, then these tracks will automatically disappear from the track section the minute you add them. Also, in terms of creating a process group, if you had multiple tracks before, you used to have to create multiple increments of different outputs. This is all done automatically, and now in terms of the output tracks are completely automatic. So we're going to see this in action kind of like in real time, but I did want to show this new process panel because it does make a huge difference. Also, we have some new modes that we can use with respect to SmartPitch. And SmartPitch is a really interesting way that we have the ability to align to timing and pitch. But in previous versions of Revoice Pro, for example, you could always align to timing, or you could align to timing and pitch. But what happens if you wanted to align to timing, and then you had certain ones that were harmonies, and then you had other ones that may have been a lead vocal? So you had certain ones that were unison, where you needed timing and pitch. And then anything that was like a harmony track, for example, you would need the timing from the lead track, but you would want the pitch to be left alone. So there's a new mode that we have if we create a process group. I'll just do this really, really quickly now. There's a new mode that we have where we have the ability to open up the process panel And this option right over here, the SmartPitch mode, we have now match all to guide. This is pretty self-explanatory. It will 100% match everything to the guide. Then we have match unison only. So in the case where you had a harmony and you didn't want it tuned, you could say, well, if it's a unison, I want it to match the pitch, but if it's not, then I don't want it to be tuned. And then you have an option where you can match a unison and you can tune a non-unison. So this is kind of like an intelligent, smart detection mode where it knows what it needs to do. If it's a unison, it's going to match the actual guide in terms of the tuning. And if it's not, it's going to leave it alone. And then it'll either tune it or it'll either leave it alone. Okay, and then we have level. So we're going to get into all this. I'm going to just take a look at the comments here. If I want these functions as a plugin. Yeah, in terms of, I'm answering a couple of these, and I apologize if there's a massive delay here. So I need to look into Repitch if I want these functions as a plugin. In Repitch, you do have a lot of these basic functions. You have the basic options in terms of the tuning, which we had like over here. In terms of if you want to have this style of GUI, where you have the dynamic zooming, you can click, hold, and drag to reposition. You have these different control points. You have the ability to use the draw tool, which allows you to redraw different sections of a note. If you want Repitch or Revoice Pro to resynthesize, then you definitely want to check out Repitch because it can work in your actual session, and that works in ARA, and it can work in Pro Tools with like real-time transfers and stuff like that. Good morning. Wow, watching unison, wow, matching unison or harmony. Yes, it is very good. There's no ARA for Revoice 5 for Studio One. Yes, there is. A note on ARA for Revoice 5, Revoice Pro 5 and Studio One is that currently it is set with the legacy plugin, which is slightly different. That is something that as the next update rolls out for Studio One, and I really have no clue when that will be, you will most likely see that the new version of the Revoice Pro Link plugin that's been added in Revoice Pro 5, that will be the one that is integrated in terms of the integration of the menus. Okay, just taking a look at a couple more things over here. Yes, trial, guys, check out a trial. Guys and girls, check out a trial. You can take a look at it. You can use it. Another thing I want to mention before we get started here is that if you go over to the Synchro Arts YouTube channel, there is a bunch of content that has to do with getting started in really popular DAWs. So we have coverage for Logic Pro, ARA, and selection-based processing workflows. We have coverage for Pro Tools. We have coverage for Studio One, Cubase, and then Ableton Live as well. So the way I tend to look at Revoice Pro, working with Revoice Pro, is there's like two main sections. There's getting everything sent from your DAW into the program, and then there's like the meat and potatoes of actually working in Revoice and then getting everything sent back. So this is kind of like a summary of what's new in this particular case. And now at this point, I think probably it's best to go through some examples. And if there is any questions on any of these new features, the main ones, the new ones over here being like the shaper tool. And also I do want to show one more thing actually before we get moving. I can't remember if I created a match process for any of these, but if you want to make any changes to the timing, this is something that's been massively improved. So if I wanted to change the timing, if we make a highlighted selection across these pitch blocks, let me zoom into this, and I'm using my dynamic zooming over here. In previous versions, we had warp points, and we can still add warp points, and they still work in the background behind the scenes. But one of the things that I love is, let's say that I wanted to anchor down this whole entire phrase from right over here, but I wanted to pick a point in which I'm making a timing adjustment. So maybe this one over here. If I wanted to extend this, this is one thing I need to make sure that I am not locking any horizontal movement, which is something I tend to have on by default when I do my tuning. If I wanted to make any changes to this, notice that we have this cursor icon. I'll zoom in a little bit. Hopefully this comes across. You can see this cursor icon changes. When we have this icon, we can navigate to the outer region boundary of the pitch block, and then I can adjust this whole phrase. Everything that's before and after remains relevant or locked down. So we've just completely altered that timing. I'll undo that and I'll go back now the other way. I'm going to move this now this way. So we can pick a point of a phrase that we want to anchor down, and just by multi-selecting these, we can totally tweak and adjust the pocket. And the thing that I love about this is, in general, I find that the time compression and expansion in Revoice Pro 5 is far superior to really any DAW that I've used, but also lots of other tools that allow you to make timing adjustments. This is one of the things. So anytime, a simple timing change, if you highlight multiple pitch blocks and then you choose a point in terms of where you want that timing change to be applied, just click holding and dragging, you can adjust those and it ends up sounding really, really good. And then if you have 2 points where you have, like, for example, just 2 notes, if I made an adjustment here, then this would automatically just shift over. And if I make an adjustment to this one over here, it's going to be the same thing. But I would always recommend if you're changing things and you want to have an anchor point, then you just highlight across these pitch blocks just like this. You make those adjustments. The other thing to mention is that anything that's an unpitched voicing, in terms of if you have sibilance or breaths or consonants or anything like that, that gets kind of left out or filtered out from the process. And if you hover your cursor here, notice that we also have the ability to adjust the level of this as well. So if I play this, that one, it stands out a little bit too much. I can click, hold, and drag to reposition this. And now notice that this actually turns down in terms of its level. Let's see what's going on here. That's the easiest and intuitive stretch feature. Yeah, for me it is, because the way I think about adjusting phrases in terms of anytime I'm adjusting pocket, I think the first thing to point out is I'm never like doing anything crazy unless that is the intent. It's only going to be a small little tweak, pretty much the same way that I just made, and just saying to myself, right, this is the phrase I'm working with, and we need to make an adjustment on this section over here. I want to pull this back, but everything else needs to bend and move relative to everything. Then you just make that adjustment there. If I wanted this to stay exactly where it is, this to stay exactly where it is, and then I just wanted to adjust the phrasing of these 3, then I can kind of highlight these 3 points over here to lock them down and then choose which point I want to make the timing adjustment. Or if I wanted to make it from the other side, like which would be over here, just push this over. This stuff is staying locked down. And you have so much control in terms of being able to adjust everything. I'm seeing some stuff here. Feature request. Okay, feature requests. I'm not going to cover that. I'll let the SynchroArts folks dive in for that. The other thing is with respect to anytime that you're doing these changes, I mentioned that we can hover our cursor and we have these 3 control points. This is a kind of, I hate to use the word game changer for me, but in terms of being able to adjust sibilance and consonants, if I take a look at anything here, notice all of these little areas that have a little bit of a aqua blue highlighted area. You can see this one right over here. This is an unpitched voicing, which doesn't get altered if we adjust the tuning, but we have this level change, and I can either select it and then hover my cursor, or you don't even have to have it selected. You can just adjust the actual level, and then it's going to adjust any sibilants or consonants. So I can just pull this down. And if you kind of do this a lot, you can see visually how things are supposed to look. And then if I go to this section, it looks like we have an S and a T.
I have the guts to speak.
So I have the guts to. So we have like an S and then we have a T. And they're very loud. They're very bright.
I have the guts to speak.
So if I listen to both of these together, I could just hover my cursor, pull these down, and I'm doing this. I don't really have to change the view if I want to.
I have the guts to speak this out loud.
Okay, there's another one over here, so I can just zoom in, hover my cursor, pull this down a little bit. But another thing is, if you want to visualize this in a different way, if you click the L key, then we have a completely separate view that allows us to have really detailed information about the levels. And for the levels, let me just over here, if I now select this, there's 2 different ways that it works. First of all, you can just click, hold, and drag. We get a preview. We get an audio preview. And I can click, and we can see the amount of dB that actually decreases as we're doing that. Let me actually just reset this for a moment. And then another thing that's useful is holding Alt or Option. We can click and hold this and drag this down, and then this snaps in 3 dB increments. Now for me, I always use 3 dB increments as kind of like a starting point for any sibilance adjustment. So because they're filtered out visually in a different color, I can just kind of shift through this just using my mouse scroll wheel. Here's a breath. Let's listen to it. So we hear this breath. I'm going to just make a selection, and I can just pull this down. We'll go over here, double clicking to place my cursor, spacebar to play. So this one is like an H. I'll bring it down a little bit. Let's scroll over again, another breath.
Maybe.
This is the other thing, because they're filtered out visually so nicely, is that I don't necessarily have to waste a lot of time playing. And I can even make these level adjustments visually if I want to. So for this one, I can tell that's probably the same thing we had where we have the S followed by a T.
Just a shadow.
Okay, this one is actually, we have levels too.
Maybe just a shadow.
Okay, for these, I'm going to maybe potentially try pulling these down 6 dB. I'll hold Alt or Option. There's 3, there's 6. Let's have a listen.
Maybe just a shadow.
Okay, I gave her a lisp. It's too much. Let's bring it back up a little bit.
Just a shadow.
Okay, awesome. This one, let's go for 3. Alt or Option modifier, hold this.
Maybe just a shadow.
Brilliant. Now I'm going to use the R key to zoom out a little bit, and we can click, hold, and drag to reposition. The other thing that we can do from within this view is we can make the level adjustments from within here. So if you'd rather have this view, which can be actually pretty useful in terms of seeing all this information, then you can simply highlight across these purple pitch blocks that are shown as purple in this case, and then I can click Alt or Option modifier, that's down 3 dB. I don't know if that's too much, but let's just back up a little bit. We'll give ourselves a bit of pre-roll and we'll have a listen.
Loud. Maybe just to share my feelings.
Okay, maybe I went a little bit too far. I never really see the goal of this as being to flatten something out completely. Certain things are going to be louder. Let's undo that and let's go down maybe 2 dB instead. So any one of these pitch blocks. And also you can just do it visually.
Maybe just to share my feelings.
Also, individually, this one over here, it's too loud. I can see that even visually, and I'm just going to pull this down a little bit.
Feelings. Maybe.
Okay, sorry, I got a comment coming in. Brian asked if you want to adjust one note without changing the adjacent notes, what's the workflow? Okay, so you're talking about, I apologize for that coming in late on the timing, but I'm assuming that's what was referring to. Brian asked if you don't want to adjust just one note without changing the adjacent ones. Is this possible? If you don't want to adjust just one note. It all depends on what you add in your selection. So if you're doing timing, I'll click the L key to get out of the levels for a moment. Let's hop back in just for a moment into the timing. This is the great thing about the selector tool is you can do a lot of different things from the selector tool. I could even continue adjusting those levels. I'll do that using the selector tool versus going in and going into the level selection. If you're adjusting timing of something, if you multi-select anything over here, this will anchor down everything. And then if we've tried to visualize this in terms of if these were warp points, if this was the old school way of doing it, we have a point here, we would have a point potentially here, and then we would have a point here. And then as we adjust this point here, everything gets stretched. So it gets time compressed from either the left to right based on the highlighted selection that we have. I'm hoping that I'm answering this question properly. But if I do this, it gets pushed, everything gets pushed over, but everything, the timing change, everything gets locked down, or rather all the timing changes are, they're relative from this point backwards and this point forward because everything gets either pushed or pulled. If you wanted to omit something, if you only wanted a change to happen between 2 notes, then if you have these 2 notes selected and you make that adjustment, then everything else is staying in place. It's staying as it is. You could also make an adjustment like that if you wanted to, but you have to always keep in mind what it is, your goal in terms of what you're trying to do. I'm hoping that I answered that correctly. Is there a way to select all the sibilants only with a single click and do an initial level on the whole track? And can you still remove warp points? Are they still accessible? Okay. So I'll answer the first question first. Is there a way to do them all? So the short answer to that is no. And I think the reason for that is unless you're working with something, and this is something that came up in the beta, but I think the reason for that is unless you're working with something that is maybe very, very compressed and you have like one dynamic that you wouldn't necessarily want to decrease everything by the same amount. That being said, I don't know if this will change. I can only really speak to the current implementation of how it is now. What I can tell you is that I find it actually very easy to move through and adjust sibilants and stuff. And I'm at the point now with Revoice in general, and maybe even if I do this in clip gain, I'm at the point where I can almost do this. I could do a first pass without actually having to listen. But that being said, we don't actually listen to vocals in context of like having them soloed. We listen to things when they are in context of a whole entire song. So if I was to do something like this and make some adjustments, I would listen relative to everything. So we have an instrumental that's in here. Let's bring that in.
I'm tongue-tied, 'cause I'm busy trying to reach.
Okay, so this one, too much. Alter option, down, play.
Busy trying to reach your mind.
A little bit. And I can also bring these down while everything's playing
Trying to
too.
reach your mind, but I gotta talk to you.
Okay, that one over there, this was too loud. They gotta talk to you.
Gotta talk to you.
Okay, both of these are too loud. I would alter option to go down 3, alter option to go down 3. And then if you have this option, I believe it is this one over here. If I played from here,
Gotta talk to you.
and then I made an adjustment, I don't always have to double click to bring myself back. If I press play, it's going to go back to that last spot.
Gotta talk to you.
Okay, that's good. We'll move on.
Maybe we could run and hide. Get a little drunk on voiceover.
That's not
I have
bad.
the guts to speak this out loud.
Still good.
Loud. Maybe just to share my feelings.
So these are the ones that we already adjusted, and I'm liking everything so far. I don't really hear anything that's sounding out of place. But just to kind of give you a before and after, if we go back to some of these changes and we head back to here, if I click the comma key, which bypasses everything, this will now, we're going to hear the difference between the levels, we'll hear the difference between the sibilance popping out, and we'll hear the massive tuning changes in terms of the before of where we started with this vocal.
Always so I have the guts to speak this out loud. Loud. Maybe just to share my feelings. Maybe it's part of me.
We can hear the pss, pss, pss. We can hear these sibilants. They're really kind of being overcooked. And also these have quite a different level change. We made quite an adjustment, but notice how it sounds really seamless now. We have tuning changes and level changes. I'll play that again.
Loud. Maybe just to share my feelings. Maybe it's part of me.
Okay, I heard a little bit of something, an artifact here. Let's zoom in here.
Maybe it's part of.
Okay, I could either try to bring this down a lot.
Maybe it's part of me.
Sometimes you just have a sibilant that is it's got this weird sound. So it might require some tweaking in clip gain, like post processing. It's something that I'll just make a mental note of and move on.
Maybe it's part of me healing. Or maybe I'm in need of a shoulder that knows it.
Okay, this one over here, too loud. Again, alter option, we'll bring that down.
Maybe it's part of me healing. Or maybe
This breath here, bring it down. There's a question here. Can it show how many dB is being trimmed as well as absolute dB? In terms of what it shows, in terms of like a dual display that shows that it's being turned down 3 and then it has been turned down a certain amount. No, not for this display over here. Let me just double check this one. And this one, it's just a static level change. Actually, this I guess would be a static level change that shows you the full amount that it's been turned down. And if you go to the level display, this one will show you the absolute value. So yeah, I guess technically, if it depends which view you're in, but you can work in both.
or maybe I'm in need of a shoulder that knows who I am, not the arms of a stranger.
Okay, this one over here, too loud. Again, alter option. I love this 3 dB as a starting point. Anytime I make clip gain adjustments, it's usually between 2.5 and 4.5 dB. So 3 is kind of like a really good starting spot.
The arms of a stranger. The arms of a stranger. So when
Okay, massive breath here. We hear that gasp. Let's bring this down.
I can keep
And this one, too loud. Let's bring this down.
I can keep my head up.
So I think everybody gets the idea here. We have also the levels that are kind of like really loud in this case. I could highlight all of these and bring them down, just even visually. Here's a tip too. If the tuning preview is way too loud for you, especially when you're tuning things or dragging them, if you head down to the bottom, very bottom of the, I'm going to try to do a zoom and I think it should come through in the live stream. You have master volume, but you also have tuning preview. The tuning preview, if you click this slider and pop this out, we can actually bring this down a little bit. Sometimes things can be really jolting when you're grabbing a wrong note or something that's kind of, harsh in general. I think I accidentally forgot to answer another question. How did you get to that level display? Yes, I'm sorry guys, I'm so late trying to manage everything here. Yes, L key for the level display. L key. This brings you in and out of the level display. It's timeline locked. So if you're at a certain point, like here in the level, and you go over here, this will bring you in and out. There was something, can you emphasize one? Yeah, if you wanted to emphasize a breath right over here. If I wanted this to be super loud, so I don't know why I would ever want to do that, but you can tweak everything to your heart's content. I'll be honest with you. It's amazing. I never really realized until I started talking to people who are really good at vocal editing, or let's say vocal production, vocal tuning, time alignment, production, like building things, building amazing vocal beds. When I actually found out how much work people were doing, usually with clip gain, it blew my mind. This is something that I can do it fairly well in Studio One or Pro Tools, and it's something that I started doing, and when I started doing this, it changed everything for me. It meant that my de-essers weren't working as hard. It meant that my compressors weren't working as hard. It meant that if I had a pop track or something that was like a folk track, and I went too heavy on the compression on the way in, I could really get a smooth, polished sounding track. It's amazing. Even when you take into consideration that we comp between different performances, certain performances might be 5 dB too loud. Hopefully we adjust these as we go when we're comping, but sometimes we don't. This type of fine level detail work, it is so easy to do. It's so easy to do in Revoice, and it's so easy to visualize it. And one of the other things I like is if you take a look at doing this right over here, this one, this T. If we take a look at this in a DAW and we're using clip gain, you have to make a highlighted selection, and then you're pulling it down, and sometimes you have this kind of like steep line in terms of automation where you have like a 5 dB drop where all of a sudden it's quieter, and then you sometimes have to try to smooth it out. I don't know what's happening here. The algorithm is doing an amazing job. If I drop this down, it takes care of everything. It takes care of everything in between here. So if I solo, if I wanted to bring this down a little bit more, I never feel like I've taken a chunk of something and it's been lopped off and decreased 10 dB, and then that they're blocked back together beside each other and it's jolting or jarring. That's another reason why I like doing it in this context. I'm thinking notes in a timeline. Presenter said I'll make a note of that odd sibilance and come back to it later. Yeah, sometimes I have things. Sometimes you have things that sound weird. I have had vocals that I'm tuning before. This is kind of funny. At least it's funny to me. Maybe it's just really nerdy, like producer engineering humor. But I've had cases where I'm tuning something and it sounds like the vocal has been auto-tuned or over-tuned. It sounds like that somebody put auto-tune on it and applied way too much tuning, way too aggressively, and then rendered it and baked it in and then sent it to me. But it's actually the natural vocal. So sometimes you just have certain things. In those cases, I would probably get really forensic, and I would consider snipping out that S, copying and pasting one from a similar thing into another. That's only if it's like it has a really weirdness to them. But usually you can adjust those by messing with the volume envelope somehow. But that might be something that I would leave later. It's really changed the way I edit voiceover, narration, etc. Oh yeah, hands down. Absolutely, I would agree. How download legacy version? I'm assuming Revoice Pro. If you go to the SynchroArts website and head to the downloads, there is an area for legacy downloads, I do believe. Like a marker, I am certain we have those. Okay. Let me check to see if there's any other questions I missed. Can you drop, remove warp points? Are they still accessible? Yes. Dylan asked, how do we get the level display? I answered that one. Can you do an emphasis too much? We went through that. Brian asked, if you don't want to, just, okay, I covered that. Okay. So yes, in terms of the levels, the thing to understand with how this is working is that, in terms of the warp markers. The levels, nice and easy, in and out, 2 different displays. We can accomplish very similar things. I do want to mention too, like I said, with the unpitched voicings, we can still grab and adjust and make level changes for any unpitched voicings. In the case where I do my first pass of tuning, this might be the easier approach to grab but maybe only if something really stands out. Like if that really stands out, and I'm just going to do a little bit. I'll just do a click, hold, and drag.
Make me feel something.
So that sounds good. Keep moving.
Make me feel something, but not feeling nothing at all.
This breath, way too loud. Bring it down.
Nothing at all.
But I always bring breaths down in context of the track. I never bring breaths down in solo.
Nothing at all.
Okay.
Nothing.
So if we go back.
I'm tongue-tied, 'cause I'm busy trying to read.
So this one over here. You get the idea. This is a brilliant way to be able to make adjustments. Now, one other thing I do want to make mention of is that when I do my first pass of tuning, let me bring my picture-in-picture back here. When I do my first pass of tuning, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even have that on. I always make sure that this is locked. In the top right over here, I horizontally lock this because what that means is that this tool over here, it is a pitch tool. No matter where I grab it, it is a pitch correction tool. If this is deselected, then we have a multi-tool where we can adjust the timing of these individual ones over here. And you can also just click, hold, and drag. If you want to adjust the timing of one note, I can just click, hold, and drag to reposition this. If I just kind of want to like slip this and edit this, I can just click this and drag it. That being said, I definitely prefer to do a first pass of tuning only, where I will lock this and then I will go back and do the other one. Before I forget, because I've tried to answer this question 4 times and I keep confusing myself and digressing, if we switch over to the warp point tool, which we can get to by pushing the period key, I want to show this, because this is what's really interesting, what's happening kind of behind the scenes. If we take a look at our vocal, anything that we're looking at, this is what we see as the main view over here. This is what we see.
I'm tongue-tied, 'cause I'm...
But in the background, if I push the period key, take a look at all the warp points that have been added. If you wanted to use the warp point tool that you wanted to make adjustments to, and if you wanted to add or remove any of these, or you wanted to make any changes like this way, in terms of like, if you much prefer to use this tool, you can get to this tool by simply using the shortcut, the period key. You can get to this tool, and then you could make multiple adjustments with the warp point tool. I will be honest though, I think that for the most part, since we have the ability to do it from the selector tool, that I am using I'm just simply multi-selecting things and using the selector tool. Make sure that I unlock this right over here. I'm just using it like this because for me, it's so much easier to visualize. I can instantly hear it and I don't have to worry about anything being locked down or changed. Okay, I need to take a look at this iPad here. It's going crazy. Let's see what we have. So can you still drop? Okay, yeah. So the warp points, we went over that. They're there. Just for the warp points, again, push the period key, which is a keyboard shortcut, and it'll bring the warp points in. You can modify or change them as you always have been able to. If you prefer to work in that, if you prefer to finesse a specific area with that tool, you can do that. But it's worth mentioning though that if you do that, it will look the same in the main selector tool. It will look the same. Like if you move something, it will be modifying the warp points in the background. This is what I love about this. It's a simplified display in terms of what we're actually seeing. And in terms of let me bring this picture-in-picture back. In terms of if we do something that could be really complex, it doesn't look complex. We can just make a change by highlighting something. In the background, it is complex. There's a lot of stuff going on. But in terms of how we use it, it's very practical. Same with level changes. Same with like the fact that this is being separated and everything. Let me go back into the comments over here. When you're done, do you render and send back in your DAW for finishing your mix? And what is the major advantage of Revoice Pro? And how are you bringing back in and out? As I noticed, you're not using Sync DAW. Okay. These are great questions. Let me switch over to my main camera view for a moment over here. When you're done. Okay. Here is the way that after 9 years of Revoice Pro and at the point that Revoice Pro is right now, here is my recommended approach. First things first, become an expert in your DAW that you use in terms of like the basics. And when I say the basics, I mean, there's really only 2 things. You need to know how you send your audio over to Revoice Pro. And then once it lands in Revoice Pro, you need to know, how do I send my audio? Once I've done my work, how do I send it back? There's getting started videos for all the major DAWs. And if one is missing for the DAW that you use, your DAW of choice, make mention of it to the folks at Synchro Arts, and we will try our best to get some tutorial content out, either by me or somebody else. Once you have that done, think about this as a completely separate process. And think about this in terms of, I will completely separate the aspect of everything that's happening in my DAW, and then this is polishing, this is finessing, this is finalizing. Revoice Pro is a standalone application, and it has the ability to communicate very nicely. We have certain different workflows for ARA, Cubase, Logic, Studio One, any DAW that supports ARA. I think that Reaper's in that as well. And I believe Nuendo, I'm not sure though. And then we have Pro Tools, which is like Audio Suite. And then we have things like Ableton Live, where we can do real-time transfers. Once you have it there, you can have a Revoice Pro document that gets recalled with your session. If I was doing this in an ARA DAW, it's automatic. If I recall a session and I open up a Logic session, Cubase, Studio One, anything where I've used it, this will open up the Revoice Pro document. I can continue to work in this. I could say I've had enough for the day. I could save it, close it, shut down, come back the next day, open up. I don't have to render in terms of like committing and being afraid that it's not going to recall correctly. No, I can continue to work until I'm completely happy with it. For me personally, I will always render, but I will only render at the last step because there's so much freedom and flexibility to leaving things in Revoice because maybe I missed something. Maybe I send out a preview of a mix to an artist and they send me back something and they say, I love it. And they give me a couple points to check, 10 seconds in, 17 seconds in. Here, this note, this line, can you check the tuning on this? Can you bring down this S or this breath? Or can you took too much sibilant out on this and it sounds like I have a lisp. Can you bring that back? Whatever the case is. So the cool thing is when you're in an ARA-based DAW, or really even if you're using the streaming that's available now with the Revoice Pro Link, that you can play everything in context of your DAW and you can be listening to the results that are happening in Revoice. So you don't have to render right away, but I will always recommend rendering because at the end of the day, I want to commit to this and I want to consolidate and bake in these changes that I'm making. So once I'm happy with everything, I would probably do a save as, where I have like, and it might be called vocals rendered or something, but I would still maybe leave myself a version of my session. And also you can save, if you're working in Revoice and you want to actually save a Revoice Pro session, you could save that session. You could even put it in your session folder of your DAW if you want to be able to recall that and open them and be able to make changes later on. So, but at the end of the day, I'm always going to commit to any changes that I've made in Revoice. I always want them to be in the final version, and I don't want to have the potential of anything not recalling properly. I'm just going to commit to it, and it'll be as if though it was recorded that way and it was the perfect vocal that was recorded perfectly. Okay. Terry R. asks, using Vocaline Ultra, what is the major advantage of Revoice Pro over Repitch as an addition? Okay, so my thoughts on this have changed. I used to say that any time that I needed to do massive amounts of timing and changing, tuning and timing, or creating what used to be an APT, that I would take it over to Revoice. Then we got Repitch, and guess what? I love working with Repitch. I love this style of being able to, let me switch back to a different screen over here. I love this style of being able to dynamically zoom things. I love the ability to use the shaper tool to make these insane adjustments to a pitch trace and things like that. So I started using Repitch. And then in terms of Revoice Pro, it was still only when I needed like a massive amount of tracks. If I needed like 5 or more tracks and I had multiple audio events that were on my timeline, then I would consider Revoice Pro. Revoice Pro at that point though was a little bit different. It didn't have all the features of Repitch. So at that point, Repitch had a leg up over Revoice in terms of handling a couple things differently. At this point, the connection that we have with Repitch and Vocaline Ultra using SyncroLink, where you can make changes in Repitch and then send it over to Vocaline Ultra, and you could apply either the timing or the timing and tuning of the Repitch guide to your Vocaline tracks or your Vocaline regions. That that kind of had a cutoff point before where I would say, okay, well, I'll just do it for 5 tracks or 6 tracks if I only need a timing change. But now with SmartPitch, and now with the improvements where I can edit my vocals in Revoice Pro as easily as I can in Repitch, I would probably say that my new cutoff or my new threshold would be that if I need to send anything more than maybe 2 tracks where I'm doing like timing and pitch, or if I need to use one of the new SmartPitch presets, which, like I said, before it was either timing or timing and pitch. There was nothing in between. We could always take the timing and apply it to one thing, and we could always take the timing and pitch. But if it was the timing on some stuff, the timing and pitch on some stuff, we had to choose one or the other. We don't have to choose one or the other now. With SmartPitch, and I'm going to get into an example of this in a little bit, but with SmartPitch, we can have a lead and harmony tracks, and we can set it to timing and pitch, and SmartPitch intelligently knows that, oh, hey, that's a harmony. Leave its tuning alone. Or, oh, hey, that's a harmony. Let's tune it to 100% according to the nearest semitone. That's extremely powerful, and that saves time. So now this makes it different. So now at this point, I would say that anything that's really like 2 tracks or over, I'm going to send it to Revoice Pro potentially. Let me try to take a look at one of these other comments. Guys, I apologize if I take a long time to answer questions or if I'm really behind on these. How are you bringing backing in and out as I notice that you're not synced to a DAW? Yeah, for this live stream, I very much want to focus on Revoice Pro. In terms of how I get this sent over, it's no different than sending over a vocal region. So if it's an ARA-based DAW, I basically just put a little split, highlight however many bars that I need, and then I use Revoice Pro Link. It gets sent over to Revoice Pro. If it's Pro Tools, we can use the audio suite version of Revoice Pro Link, and we can get that sent over. Even if I'm working in an ARA DAW, it's amazing to be able to hop back to the DAW and press play and hear all of your changes in context to your whole entire session. That's awesome, hands down. But there's a benefit, and usually in those cases, I already might have reverb, I might have delay, I might have widening, effects, compression, EQ, dynamics, de-essing, lots of saturation, lots of processing. So I can make a change and immediately hear the final results in my timeline. But there's also something to be said about needing to be able to listen to things that are dry. You're not able to hide behind any reverb. You're not able to hide behind a delay or a chorus or anything like that. So there's something to be said about using just a dry chain where you have nothing, and I'm listening to the raw tracks, but I always need to listen to my reference. So for me, the reference is absolutely 100% ideal, and I will use that regardless of what I'm doing. I will always pull in a reference because I need to hear a reference. If I'm tuning, I need to hear a reference if I'm time aligning or making any changes to the pocket. I need to hear a reference if I'm listening to a stack of 4 different vocals. So I would always advise, even if you're working in an ARA DAW, I would always advise bringing in an instrumental. Export it out of your DAW, export it, bring it back in, and then get it sent over to Revoice. Lots of information regarding, how different DAWs can handle that. Let me take a look to see if I'm missing any other questions. Sorry, guys, this is so much to manage all at once. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so at this point now, I want to start taking a look at, we're listening to the vocal that's completed in this tuning example, and we went over everything in terms of lots of different examples for timing and tuning. I'm going to open up the starting point. So this is the lead vocal. This is completed. This is after I've done a pass. What I want to do now, let's find the same one, lead vocal and tuning, Revoice Pro 5. Let's go back to the same example and take this from scratch, okay? So we already know what we can sound like in terms of our polished final output. I want to make sure that this is set to the proper output track. Now, this is our lead vocal. We right-click, we adjust pitch, timing, or level. This is what was previously known as Make Warp Region in previous versions of Revoice Pro. It is now just an adjust. We adjust time and pitch or level. Go full screen, come back to the beginning. I'm going to go pretty fast. I'll talk about what I'm doing here, and I'll talk about which tools we're using, which tools we can use, and we're going to go through the examples in real time. So for this,
I'm tongue-tied, 'cause I'm busy trying to read your mind, but
Okay, let's go to this very first one. So we've got lots of different ways that we can approach this. We can do a mix between using different tools, which is what I tend to generally do. For this one, let's pull up the K. For center notes, we can adjust the correction amount, but also we can adjust the drift. So maybe I can do a bit of a level adjustment in terms of straightening that out. And then also, this is just great to just go across and get an average pitch center of where everything is going. If I'm taking a look at this one right over here, I might choose to use a cutter tool and first make a little bit of a separation. So I bring these into 2 notes. We'll have a quick listen.
I'm tongue-tied.
Okay, so this sounds a little bit better. It's not perfect yet. Let's fix the drift of this, though. We're going to use the shaper tool. I'll right-click. I'll use the shaper tool. If I click anywhere, notice we have those multiple points that have been added. We can click, hold, and drag, and we can reposition these from left to right if we need to move them. And we can make sure that these are anchored at the very ends. And then holding the Alter Option modifier, let's just try to straighten this out. I'm just going to kind of redraw this.
Tied.
Okay, if we want to listen to a before and after of where we are now, let's first make sure that these ones are in tune. Again, if I wanted to use the correct notes tool, that's at 100%.
I'm tongue-tied.
Let's bring in our music as a reference.
I'm tongue-tied. 'Cause I'm.
Okay, this one right over here, we need to fix that. This is flat.
'Cause I'm.
Let's take this. We're just going to click, hold, and drag. And in this case, actually, what I'll do is I will lock the horizontal because I don't want to accidentally adjust the tuning. I just want to adjust this right over here. I'm click, holding, and dragging. Listen.
'Cause I'm.
This one here, again, just I can use this to make sure that it's at 100%. I could select both of these, and I could use this correction amount to make sure that they're at 100.
'Cause I'm.
Now, this looks really, really jagged, so there's a bunch of different ways that we can approach fixing this. One way would be that we could just right-click, and let's use a draw tool. This is something that was inherited from Repitch. If I just say, well, I would want it to sound like that in a perfect world, it's cheating, and I would probably first aim to get this to sound better, but if I wanted to do it quickly,
'Cause I'm.
okay, that doesn't sound bad at all. Now, we have another tool. We can flatten out what's already there as a starting point, or we can also just grab the shaper tool. We can add some multiple points, and we can just attempt to kind of drag some of these lines to reposition them. What is better for, I got a really quick comment there. I'm going to try to answer the comments in real time. What is better for ADR, Revoice or VocalLine? The new VocalLine, the new timing adjustments of VocalLine Project and VocalLine Ultra both sound amazing. Revoice has a little bit more control, and Revoice has a specific mode that's optimized for dialogue. So I think potentially Revoice Pro is the better one for post-production.
'Cause I'm.
Okay, go back to the beginning. Pull this down a little bit. We'll take a quick listen to these. This one here.
I'm tongue-tied.
There.
I'm tongue-tied.
Now, also, one thing I want to point out, this is something that often gets overlooked. It was in previous versions, but it is so crazy and powerful. We can multi-select 2 pitch blocks beside each other, and then if we right-click, we can smooth join. Where is it over here? The key is the M key. A lot of the time, people might just use it once. You can use it multiple times. If you have 2 things that you're connecting and they sound a little bit jagged, you push it once. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Watch what happens when I keep pushing it. Look at how it just kind of morphs itself into something that it just kind of smooths it out over and over and over.
I'm tongue-tied. 'Cause I'm busy trying to reach you.
Okay, this one over here.
I'm tongue-tied. 'Cause I'm busy.
This one, let's get these notes there. Busy trying to. This one. Now this one, I'm going to separate this. We'll go to the cutter tool. Let's say somewhere about there. That automatically puts the tail as she swoops up. It kind of leaves that where it needs to be in terms of being in a natural position. And then I would just potentially use the correction slider.
Busy trying to reach you, my butt.
Okay, that one we went flat. So let's listen to this.
Oh, my butt.
This one, there's a number of different ways that we could approach this, right? If this had any drift issues, we could pull up the correct notes tool. We could just adjust this drift, get that as good as a starting point. More and more though, for these types of issues, I'm using the shaper tool all the time now because I can create these points. Keep in mind, clicking once, it'll add multiple ones, but if you hold the Alter Option modifier, you can click to add them just where you need them. When you add these shape points just exactly where you need them, now if you hold the Alter Option modifier, you you lock down the point before and after, and you can just finesse this into place. Also, you can highlight either across on the top or you can highlight on the bottom, and then I can just pull this down a little bit. Let's pull this one down. Let's pull this one up.
Oh my, but
And now its tuning is a little off, so we could, I didn't mean to go to the cutter tool. We could go to the selector tool. Whoops, I had multiple ones selected there. This one here. Mind, but I. Okay, this one looks pretty morphed and looks pretty weird. We could try to fix it with the shaper tool. Again, this is something that's, it's a unique way to work where we can make these adjustments. We can also use a combination of things. So maybe I wanted to straighten some of this out with the shaper tool, but then I could just hop over to the draw tool and I could say, right, what transition did I want to have happen? Well, I would have wanted that, and I would have wanted this to be something like that. Then we go back to the selector tool and I can just click. And I tune a lot by ear. I actually prefer that. This might be a little much in the modulation. We can kind of chill this out a little bit or flatten this out. Let's go back.
busy trying to reach, oh my, but
Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Before.
I'm tongue-tied, 'cause I'm busy trying to reach, oh my, but
Okay, and the changes that we made.
I'm tongue-tied, 'cause I'm busy trying.
Now also, the smooth join tool, I mentioned how it's really awesome. It's a really unique tool. Sometimes if something isn't sounding the way I want it to, I'll just hit it a couple times and it just kind of like, it's cheating. It just kind of smooths things out even more.
I'm tongue-tied.
Okay, so listen to that note now. Listen to this word. I'm tongue-tied. You know how it went sharp before? This is where we were.
I'm tongue-tied.
It swooped up, but listen to it now.
I'm tongue-tied, 'cause I'm.
Now this note over here, if we listen to the before
'Cause I'm.
and the after. Whoops.
'Cause I'm.
Now, I may have gone a little too aggressive, but if you zoom in, you see this gray pitch trace that's happening in the background. This is where we were with this note before, and this is where we are now after. And it sounds really good. I can barely hear that. Unless I know that I'm looking for it.
Busy trying to reach, oh my, but I gotta talk to you.
So I'm basically using a mix between different tools. A lot of the times I'll switch between automated tools and actual manual tools. And the interesting thing in terms of how I approach tuning with Revoice Pro and with Repitch is whereas it used to be something where I would say to myself, all right, I'm 100% manual, which meant every single one of these, if I listen,
gotta talk to you.
got to talk to you. I used to think of this as it was either manual or it was automatic. With Repitch and with Revoice Pro 5, you can do both. So if I wanted to do something where I'm like, okay, let's use the correction. I'll just use the correction sliders to kind of see where the software is averaging out the pitches. But then if I need to redraw something and I say to myself, oh, this transition's pretty messy, well, then I'll just hop over to the draw tool and I can just redraw that transition. If I wanted to make a quick adjustment on just using the same natural pitch trace that I have, but leveling this off a bit, and then once it's leveled, I want to do that. And then if I want to smooth these out together, a smooth join, it's just a really interesting way to be able to work.
Gotta talk to you.
We'll go a little bit further.
Maybe we could run and hide.
Okay, so that one, I wanted to make some adjustments here. Same thing again. Just choose which method do I want to work. Do I want to work with the draw tool? Okay, so I'll just go over to the draw tool. Draw tool is really kind of like a get out of jail free card sometimes. If I wanted to readjust something and I wanted to pay attention to what is already there, and the goal with the pitch correction in terms of the brief that I get is make this sound as natural as possible, then I'm going to lock down some shaper tool nodes and I'm going to make some adjustments here. I can put a point there, put a point here, make these adjustments, pull this down a little bit. Because if I was to use this main selector tool and I was to flatten this out, it's going to flatten out everything together. But what about the cases where I want to move certain pitch points in terms of like this peak is too high or this peak is too high, but this one is okay? Then I can tweak this to my heart's content just by selecting these individual points and saying, right, I only want these ones. Or maybe I want to put a pitch point here and I want to bring this up, and then maybe all of these now need to come a little bit down. You can just morph this into place. So I think this is kind of where I want to leave off with the pitch correction. I would definitely advise checking it out and using all these tools, the draw tool, the shaper tool, the center notes tool, in terms of the, now I will say this too, if you're used to a certain workflow where you use, let me see if I can find an example that would be good. Let's say that you're used to a very specific type of software and you say to yourself, no, I want to work with the cutter tool. That's how I'm happy. Then that's fine. You can choose the cutter tool. You can make these separations right over here. And if you wanted to level this out in a way that would be how you're used to doing it in other software, you can still work this way. You could click any one of these points. You could either double click them to snap them to like 100%. And then you could say, okay, well, that's where it is here. And then guess what? We could give the smooth join tool a try. Just select all these areas. Let's try to get that to sound good.
Loud.
Okay, in isolation.
Loud.
Well, that's not too bad, right? We listened to the before.
Loud.
So we dropped off when we went up, but if we listen in, it really depends on how you work, but I would definitely advise checking out some of these. Okay, I want to hop over to some of the other features because where are we now? We're about an hour in. Let me switch my screen over for a moment to me. I'll make sure that I'm not missing any questions or comments as we're going. Let's see. Smooth tool. Yep. Smooth tool. The biggest tip I can give for smooth join tool is if you select multiple blocks and you hit it and it kind of does what you want, hit it again. Hit it 10 times and see whether it fixes the issue you're talking about or you were interested in fixing. And if you don't like it, undo it. Have to explore brick wall. Okay. This is great demo. I understand it's centered more around music and there's so much to cover. I send emails. Can we discuss post-production workflow? In post-production, yeah, the folks are going to be great to get you any support you need there. And post-production, the Revoice Pro and Vocalline for that matter, they're a beast. They're an absolute beast in terms of post-production workflows. Okay, let me move on now to talking about some of the other features. Let me see what we have. So we have our creating vocal doubles, and we have this one. We did this one. Let's talk about SmartPitch. This one is, I can't remember if we already created a match process. Created a match process with SmartPitch. Let me close this session and I'll reopen it. And I will change over so that everybody can see my actual screen instead of just seeing me talking. Created a match process with SmartPitch. Okay, I've got multiple different examples in this session. And I don't know if we'll have any time to move anywhere past this, but let's go over these different examples. So, SmartPitch. I'm going to zoom in. Let's have a listen to these tracks together.
Guess I need somebody like you. Need somebody like you.
Okay, if we listen to the female lead vocal, and let's listen to the male.
Guess I need somebody like you. Need somebody like you. Need somebody.
And in context of the instrumental.
Guess I need somebody like you. Need somebody like you. Need somebody.
See, this is why the instrumental is important, because sometimes if you're hearing them against each other, you don't have any like objectivity of like, oh, that's out or this is out. But when you hear everything together, you can hear things poking out of the pocket that don't really sound right. So the idea here is that you have a lead vocal, and let's just say that you're happy with the tuning in terms of all of this, regardless of how it was tuned. If I bring this up and I adjust this, that I'm super happy with that, and that is my end goal, and that's where I'm leaving off with my tuning. I think that should be good. If there's any notes, we'll fix it. At this point, we'll click the B key. This brings up our new process panel, brand new, redesigned, much more simplified. We say to ourselves, okay, I want to create a match process, and I want to match the timing and pitch of the female lead vocal to the male. No problem. We're going to work with selected audio. We'll choose a preset that works. We don't need to create a process group because it's only one match process that we're creating. Lead vocal is our guide, which is our female track. Male vocal is the dub track. And let's go ahead and create this new process. So now this has been created. It generates a brand new output track, and now we can listen to these together. So if we listen to the original lead vocal of the female lead vocal that was tuned against the male lead vocal.
Guess I need somebody like you. Need somebody like you. Need somebody like.
Now if we listen to the new output track, and a great way to be able to tell if you're ever getting confused, just take a look at the track name. Anytime you see the brackets with out in capitals, this is going to be a output that Revoice Pro created. So in this case, this is a match process output.
Guess I need somebody like you. Need somebody like you. Need somebody like you. You again.
Now, if I want to listen to this in isolation, I can obviously just solo this out. Another tip is Alter Option soloing will unsolo any other tracks and it'll solo just the one that you're interested in working with. Now, if you want to make changes, this blue block area over here, this little drop-down menu, if we click this, this will open up the process panel for this match process. This is the preset that we used as a starting point. These are the settings. We have tight timing and we have tight pitch. This is super aligned. We're using the tightest possible alignment in timing and pitch. We can back off of the timing a little bit. When I do that, let me try to see if I can do this and zoom my screen a little bit. If I back off of the timing, or let me even take, let's take the timing off completely for a moment. Watch what happens. Take a look at this. See these changes that we have. If I bring the timing back in, we have all of these timing changes that have been added. I can bring this down. This is super tight right now, but I could back off a little bit. It'll be tighter than what it was, but maybe it won't sound as perfectly aligned in terms of timing. Also, we could do the same in terms of the actual pitch. Whoops, I did that for the pitch. We can do the same thing with either one of these, where we can adjust, and we're getting this just to the point where it sounds good for everything.
Guess I need somebody like you. Need somebody like you. Need somebody like you. You again. Guess I need somebody like you. Need somebody like you. Need somebody like you. You again.
Okay, I didn't hear any issues for the female lead vocal, so that's it. That is now done. If we were working in an ARA-based DAW, such as Cubase, Studio One, Logic Pro, Reaper, whatever the case is, boom, head over to your DAW and you render that. Logic Pro, selection-based processing, ARA, you have the option to bounce in place, some way to render that into your tracks. If you're working in something like Pro Tools, you would have your quick plugins, or you'd have your Revoice Pro Link plugin. You would essentially just make sure that this track's output is selected, and then over in Pro Tools, you could then spot that into the timeline on a new playlist in Pro Tools. So there's lots of different ways to get that over. So that is the basics. Now for this, in terms of what we're using for the preset, and more specifically what we're using for SmartPitch, we're matching unison only. This is a unison right across the board. Technically speaking, I could have also used match all to guide because they're both unisons, but we're going to go with match unison only. So that's going to work. Let's take a look at some different examples now though. And also I could potentially delete this track, I think, because we're going to use the different examples that we have. And let's take a listen to what this one is.
Maybe we could run and hide.
And let's come out of solo.
Maybe we could run and hide. Get a little drunk on wine, so I have the guts to speak this out loud, loud. Maybe just to share my feelings. Maybe it's part of me healing. Or maybe I'm in need of a shoulder that knows who I am, not the arms of a stranger.
Okay, so let's focus on this lead vocal for a second. Again, full screen anytime I'm doing any changes, anytime I'm doing tuning, and again, my dynamic zooming. I'll listen to this lead vocal. I've done a tuning pass of this ahead of time. And for argument's sake, because I have to keep this live stream under 5 hours, let's say that we're happy.
Maybe we could run and hide. Get a little drunk on wine, so I have the guts to speak this out loud, loud. Maybe just to share my feelings. Maybe it's part of me healing.
You can see the pitch traces from the before and after. Actually, in some points, it's quite a drastic difference. If we zoom in these areas here, I could give this a really quick play, the before and after of how this sounds.
Maybe we could run and hide. Get a little drunk on wine, so I have the guts to speak this out loud, loud.
Okay, and we know what the after sounds like. So at this point, once this tuning is done, we're going to create a match process. But in this one, this is actually going to be a little bit different. So if we come out of full screen, let's listen to now what the male lead vocal is doing. So we'll solo this, Alter Option to solo that and make it so that it's exclusively soloing the male lead vocal. And we need to play.
Maybe we can run and hide, get a little drunk on wine, so I have the guts to speak this out loud, out loud. Maybe just to share my feelings. Maybe it's part of me healing. Or maybe I'm in need of a show.
Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. We will select this track over here, which is our main guide track, our lead vocal main guide track. We will select the B key. It's going to be match pitch, timing, or level. With respect to the actual length, most times this is going to be selected audio. If you just wanted to do a specific section, you could make a highlighted range selection, and this changes to selected playback range. But I think in most cases, you want this to be selected audio. In terms of this one now, again, match timing, pitch, and unison. Our lead vocal is our guide. Our male vocal is our dub. Let's go ahead. We don't need to worry about a process group for this. And let me make sure quickly that I'm not leaving anything out. So let me bring my visibility in for this. Let's have a listen to this one.
We can run and hide.
I'm going to bring this track in.
We can run and hide. Get a little drunk.
Okay, so for this now, we have something that's slightly different. Which headphones are you using? Oppo PM3s. Okay. Oppo PM3, closed back, no longer made, but they are the flattest headphones I've ever heard in my life, and they are perfect frequency response for me.
Maybe we can run and hide.
Okay, so now we have a high vocal unison.
Maybe we can run.
But listen to the center
Get a
part.
little drunk on my soul. I have the guts to speak this out loud, loud.
Okay, so let's break down exactly what's different about this. In this example, we have our main lead vocal, which is our female lead vocal, which we've done our tuning and we've done our pocketing. It's perfectly in time with the music. It sounds good to us. Then we have our male lead vocal, which is a unison track, and that's quite out in terms of timing and tuning. We don't want to have to work on that twice. We're going to use the female lead vocals as a guide for timing and tuning. But this third track that we see over here, this one, this is the curveball. If we listen to this,
maybe we can run and hide.
Listen to it in isolation.
Maybe we can run and hide.
This part,
Get a little drunk.
that's a harmony. If we listen to that against the lead,
Get a little drunk on my soul. I have the guts.
and then it jumps back to being an octave unison. So this is one of the scenarios that you might find yourself in, where it's not, you don't just need to have just a tuning or just a timing. Also, if we listen to this, the tuning, it's not bad, but it's not perfect.
Get a little drunk.
If we listen to the high part,
Maybe we can run and hide.
that's a little flat, that note. Let's just say that I want that tuning to be perfect, but let's listen to the tuning of the harmony.
Get a little drunk on my soul.
I would like that to be tuned as well. So let's now go back to where we were. Let's create a match process. We'll click the B key. This time it's going to be slightly different. So we're going to go with the match, timing, pitch, or level. That makes sense. Now for the length, let's go with selected audio. Now in terms of the presets, if you go to factory presets, these three ones that are down here, make sure that I'm looking at the proper ones. I'm going to match, it's going to be tight timing plus pitch. We're going to match unison, and the unison can be an octave up or an octave down, that doesn't matter. And it will tune the harmony. Because keep in mind, remember that center section that we listened to, we had a harmony. It wasn't in perfect tune. So I want to tune that. We don't necessarily need a tuning reference though. We don't need a guide because we could just say tune to the nearest semitone. If I didn't want to tune that harmony part at all, then I could just go tight timing plus pitch and match only unison. Let's do both actually. So first of all, we'll start with this one. And then for the settings, we want to make sure that we have high vox harm added as one of the dub tracks as well. So with high vox harm, which is our female harmony, let's add that to the dubs. Now I'm going to create a new process. Give this a second. This is now rendered two output tracks. We have our female lead, and we have our male lead vocal. Let's hear the original.
Get a little drunk on wine, so.
And now if we want to listen to the male lead vocal output, we go to male vocal out, and we listen to that.
Get a little drunk on wine, so.
Listen to that. It fixed the timing, and it also tuned it according to this. If we listen to the two of those together,
Get a little drunk on wine, so.
it followed it perfectly. If we listen to the original of what we had,
Get a little drunk on wine, so.
big difference. Okay, so now let's take a listen to the high vox harm output. If we listen to that on its own,
Get a little drunk on wine, so.
I didn't do any tuning on that one. I didn't use that SmartPitch mode, but I did do time alignment and tuning that goes for the lead unison.
Maybe we can run and hide.
Perfect.
Get a little drunk on wine, so.
Tuning.
I have the guts to speak this out loud, loud.
So our time alignment is now perfect. That lead vocal unison, that's an octave up, that is now sitting perfectly in terms of timing against the lead vocal that we have. Let's tweak that preset. So I'm going to go to the match process, and let's open that up for a second. And in terms of match unison only, I'm going to move this slightly out of the way. And let me also, I'm trying to zoom my screen so that we can see the high Vox harm output. If we now change the SmartPitch mode on this, I'm going to change it from match unison only to match unison and tune non-unison. What this will do is for anything that's a unison, which is this beginning part and this end part, it will match the tuning and the timing because it's a unison. And it doesn't matter if it's female vocal, male vocal, different octaves, different ranges, because it's using the nearest octave as a target mode. That's all worked out. But now match unison and tune non-unison, it is now going to tune this, which was a little bit out. So let's go match and tune. See what just happened there. Take a look at this. These notes right over here, when I take this off, these ones, they're out. Their tuning was out right over here. But if I bring this in, now that tunes it. And now let's listen to these results.
Maybe we can run and hide, get a little drunk on wine, so...
Now it's perfect. The tuning is perfect. So now we have kind of like the perfect results, right? We have our lead vocal. We have we'll bring in our music, we'll bring in our male lead vocal, and we'll bring in our high harmony.
Maybe we can run and hide, get a little drunk on wine, so I have the guts to speak this out loud. Maybe just to share my feelings, maybe it's part of me healing, or maybe I'm in need of...
Okay, so the last thing I would probably do here is, that all sounds great, but I need to make a level adjustment. The levels on both the female lead vocal and the male lead vocal right over here,
Maybe just...
they're too loud. So we already know how to do that from a previous video. We could go to our match process, and this is what our lead vocal, our adjust, we'll edit our time and pitch. And now I'd probably click the L key, and I would select all of these, and then I could just bring them down. And now if we go back, let's hear if this blends a little bit better. We'll play from here.
Maybe just to share my...
And at that point, if I did make any level changes and I was happy with them, we could actually open up the match process. And in addition to having the timing and pitch, we could say like, all right, well, I want to adjust the level too. I want the levels to be followed. Take a look at what just happened with our male lead vocal out. Because we made those changes to the level on the guide track in terms of just their level, and this could be Sibilance, but also the general level, if you pulled something down by 3 dB, we could then take that level change that we made and we could apply that. So now look at how loud these are. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Look how loud these are. And if I engage I need to go a little bit over. If I engage level, take a look at what happens. It brings them down. And then you also have varying different degrees of how you could do this. You could keep the dub's average level, or you could kind of split the difference between these, but an extremely awesome and powerful way that we have to work with this. I'm going to take a look at over here. Okay. Is there one note I don't want to be processed? Can I undo the note? Yes, I'll show you that in a moment. Could you use an octave down version of the female voice to create a decent version of the male voice? You could if you messed with the Formant. That's something I'm going to take a look at. Hopefully we don't run out of time. I want to take a look. I got one more example, which I have in this session. I don't know if it's relevant or if it's really going to add to the party. Let's have a listen to see what it is, because I can't remember.
I know it won't be happy in the end. So
Okay, this is just another set of doubles. In this case, I don't think we really need to spend any more time on this. The main thing I want to kind of drive home with this is SmartPitch. Let me give the Cole's notes on SmartPitch. You can use timing and pitch, both of these, as a starting point now. Before, you used to always have to choose. Do I want timing or do I want timing and pitch? If you needed the timing of a lead, you would have to first tune the track and then time align it. And you'd have to render either one of those before you did the next step. Now, if we choose timing and pitch, if we choose one of these two modes over here, either match unison only or match unison and tune non-unison, this is a very magic combination, and it can intelligently detect if something's not a unison. It will either leave it alone if it's match unison only, or it will tune it to the nearest semitone if it's this. Also worth mentioning that if it does tune it to the nearest semitone, but let's say the actual performance that the artist laid down was maybe a little bit out and you need to make an adjustment to it, that's okay, because at any given point in time, we can click an output track. And if you do want to make tunings to an output track, we can adjust the tuning of an output track simply by going to simply by making it an adjust process, and then we can offset the tuning, but it will lock the whole entire match process, so that you only want to do that as a very last step. Okay, now I want to try to show something else. And for this example, which one am I going to use? Let's go with this one over here. Somebody asked, if you don't want any tuning applied to anything, can you kind of like remove that from the group? Yeah, at any given point in time, if you're not happy with something that you've done, like let's say this one over here, if I don't want to have that applied, any tuning or processing, I just right click, I go to, where is it here? It's reset selected notes, and we reset all changes. It'll change it back to where it was in its starting point. So that's kind of like a get out of jail free card if you ever need to make any adjustments. In this example, I want to take a look at something. We'll take a look at doubles, but I think most people kind of understand that. But I also want to take a look at adjusting, editing, formants, and also creating a harmony. Let me just make sure that I'm not losing any of these questions that I should have been answering. ADR, headphones, is there one note want to be processed? Yep, right click, select. Could you use an octave down version of the female voice? Yeah, well, the interesting thing about the nearest octave, for the last question was, could you use an octave down? Let me go to my actual camera. Could you use an octave down version of the female voice to create a decent version of the male voice? If you have a male voice and you have a different octave, as long as it has the pitch, if your match process is in nearest octave mode, which I think most of the new presets are that are included, that's magic. It will adjust if it's a male voice versus a female voice. If it's a different octave range, it will take care of everything. The other thing, though, is that's something I'm going to take a look at showing right now, is that we can adjust the formants of things. And this is actually one area why I like to use Revoice a lot, is that if I'm making any adjustments to formants or anything like that, I will sometimes work with an artist and we might mock things up by using something like Little Altar Boy or some type of thing that allows us to apply a real-time formant shift onto an actual track. And that's a good starting point. I think formants are very useful either for getting things to sound natural or on the other side, to getting them to sound completely unnatural. If you have a lead vocal that you've done some tuning, let's start with this.
Guess I need somebody like you.
So I've done a tuning
need
pass.
Somebody like you. Need somebody like you. You again.
If you have anything that you've tuned and you're happy with that, let me go full screen for a moment. Let's kind of like zoom this into the screen. Let's say that for these ones here, these harmonies or these lines over here, let's say that I wanted to have an offset on the formant. If I go to this option, I right click, I go to the adjust A0, which is the audio region name. If I right click and I scroll to edit shift of formants, notice that we have this line. So let's talk about what this is for a moment. If I click, I can add a point right over here. Let's add a couple points. I'm going to add multiple points. We'll lock down some before and we'll lock down some after. If I click, hold, and drag, I can offset this. Notice that this just changed something. Click, hold, and drag this one. I can offset this. I can pull this down. We can highlight multiple ones and adjust them together if we want to. Make sure that they're both selected. This and this. You can adjust these together. If we take a listen.
Guess I need somebody like you.
I think that the formant adjustments that we have in Revoice Pro are so good. They're so smooth, regardless of whether I'm doing a formant shift up or a formant shift down or anything like that. Also, if you wanted to get rid of these points, you highlight them. We can right click. We have delete selected values, and this will get rid of those. So sometimes what I'll do is I just have a specific area of a vocal.
Guess I need somebody like you.
If I just have this one area in mind, I could zoom in. Let's go zoom out just a little bit. Make sure that we're back into our edit shift to formants over here. We need to make sure that we have the the parameter available to us. And then I'm going to just add some nodes, and I can make an adjustment. So I'll add one here, and then I'm going to lock down. So we click the first one, we hold shift, and we click the second one. We make sure that both of these are selected like this. And now I can pull this down, and now I'll just have this effect happening over the line, the vocal.
Guess I need somebody like you.
This I find is really cool for specific moments of a song. And in some cases, I'm not afraid to do this on a lead vocal. And if we hear that like kind of in context, that could be something that you do maybe on a double, like you bring it in and you do completely different processing. And that is something that you could do across the board, or it's something that you could automate. If you only wanted it in certain spots, maybe you want to get rid of this, you could right click, and we have the option to delete selected values. And then this kind of goes from being a normal formant down to lower. So this is now kind of halfway into the note that we have that formant shift. I like using these types of things. You hear it a lot in some modern pop. I know Dua Lipa does it a lot. That's actually where I kind of first started to hear it and actually like it. So the formant shifts are a really cool thing to be able to do. You can select these points over here that we have. If you've created stuff and you don't like it, we can just right click and we'll just delete selected values. But I want to show something else too. And that is how we can use Revoice Pro to create harmonies. So I'm going to come out of full screen. And let's assume for a moment, first of all, let's go back to just edit time and pitch. Let's assume for a moment that we are happy with our pitch correction that we've done. If we listen to this together, that we're completely happy with this as our starting point. If I wanted to create a harmony, and let's say that I don't have access to the vocalist. Let's say that the vocalist has gone, the session is over, they used a specific mic, or you rented a preamp. You can't get a set of doubles, or you can't get a set of takes, but you end up listening to something, you're working on the vocal production, and you have an idea that comes to mind, or somebody says, oh, we should have tracked a harmony, or we should have recorded a harmony. Let's take a look at a way that we can do that. I want to make sure I'm not ignoring any of these comments. I'm so far behind on the actual live stream in terms of trying to monitor these, but I've got Jordan sending me some stuff in real time too. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to tracks, and there's two ways you can approach this. If I was sending this over like from my DAW, I might create a new track in my DAW, especially if this was an ARA based DAW. I might create a new track and then drag or alt drag the region down, the area that I want to create a harmony for. And then I might bounce that file, so it's a unique file, and then send it over to Revoice. In that case, it would come over as a separate file into Revoice Pro. In this case though, I want to show you that you don't need to have that much forethought, or you don't have to do that much pre-thinking. Let's add a track, okay? We'll just go with one track that we're going to add. I'm going to reposition this track directly underneath, because if I don't, my OCD is going to kill me. And then I'm going to hold down Shift and Option, or Shift and Alt on a PC. If we click, we get this little icon. We drag and drop. This gives us a little dialog window that pops up. This could be scary if you're not used to seeing timecode. I'll tell you the simple answer. Just go with original timecode. This will spot it. This will make it so that it's in the exact same position. Now we end up having two vocals, and essentially they're the exact same thing. This vocal over here, which is just called Adjust A0, this is a rendered or baked in version of this lead vocal track. If we listen to them, they're identical.
Guess I need somebody like you. Need somebody like.
Now, if we were to play them back together, they would just sound like a louder version. So what I want to do is I want to create some tuning changes that we make on this one, and I want to actually synthesize or create a harmony. I don't want to necessarily do it across the whole thing. And I think in general, it's not good to overdo harmonies, but we'll start this process. But first of all, I'm going to name this harmony, because otherwise I'll get confused. This is another tip for Revoice, is actually two. First of all, make sure that your track header is always pulled out so that you can see your full track name. That's like tip number one. Tip number two is don't leave yourself in a situation where something is audio 0 or adjust 0 or match, or give it a name, and give it a name of what it is. If it's a lead vocal, it's a lead vocal. If it's a lead vocal high harmony, call it high harm. If it's stereo pairs, call it high harm L, high harm R. You need to be able to visually see things. Revoice is going to help us by appending things like out to the end of the track name. You won't see it if your track header width is not pulled out enough, and you'll get confused very quickly, especially if you're using the Revoice Pro Link plugin. You'll get confused very quickly if you're not naming things. So the next step is full screen on this because we're going to do some tuning, but I also want to make mention of 3 shortcuts. If you take a look at these tracks, we have the actual track number. This is track 1, track 2, track 3. I can use 1, 2, and 3. After I actually name this track and push enter, I can use 1, 2, or 3 to solo all of these, any one of them at a single time, like this, 1 and 2. So if I have the harmony soloed and I'm in full screen mode, I can bring in the lead in and out by clicking this shortcut. I just want to make sure that people know how I'm doing this. With the harmony soloed, let's go full screen, and then we can right click and we'll adjust timing, pitch, or level. This will allow us to make an actual adjustment to this. Now from here, I'm going to move my screen so I'm not blocking anything. I'm going to temporarily restrict this tuning to just tuning movement. So I'm going to lock the timing. I don't want to make any timing changes. It's just going to be tuning. So I always lock this. The reason I do this is because it makes it so that my cursor will always be, regardless of how zoomed in I am or where I click, my cursor will always be for adjusting tuning. It will never be for accidentally moving the timing of something, especially if you're working very fast. Do have something coming in here. I have one thing I have to answer. Is there any way to quantize to key scale? We do have scales that we can adjust here. You click where it says all notes. If you click scales, you have the option to click the scale, or you also have an option to click the, there's a scale detection key. It's a shortcut. So if you click the detect scale option, it's automatically detected the scale. When it does show the scale though, it will automatically kind of filter out the notes that are in the key versus out of the key. That being said, I always work in chromatic. I am just used to it. And sometimes I don't detect the key of the song at all. I just use my ear. That goes for tuning and creating harmonies manually. It's just the way I've always worked, and I've never really bothered to change. Hopefully that answers the question. So if we listen to this harmony track now,
Guess I need somebody like you.
I want to have these notes droning, and also I want these ones. I want these harmonized. This one over here and this one. So the first thing I want to do is I need to determine how hard I want to tune these tracks. I'm okay with tracks that are harmony tracks. I often will actually hard tune those. I'm going to fix a couple issues first though, because I see some stuff that's coming up. I can see that this, I want to make an adjustment. I'm going to use the draw tool for this. So for this, let's just use the draw tool, and we'll do this like that. This is now fixed this issue. I could smooth this out a little bit more if I wanted. And I'm going to scroll along, and I'm going to see if there's any more areas that are like jagged. So this one over here, again, we'll do something like this. This one, looks like we have a couple issues here. Let's take this. This one, I'm going to pull it down. And let's use our draw tool, which I tend to use a lot. We'll use this, and also for this.
Somebody like you. Need somebody.
This one here, this tapers off, goes low. We'll fix that. And then last but not least, let's grab this one. A couple ways that we could approach this, right? We could use the tuning methods. We could use a draw. We could use a shaper tool. In these cases here, if we wanted to use the center notes tool, like fixed drift and stuff, I'm just doing this quick and dirty because I know what my intent is, and it's actually going to be hard tuning. Once that's done, I'll probably make a decision, an executive decision, just for sake of demonstration here, that I want to select all of these pitches, these lower ones right over here, every single one. And if we zoom in, I'm going to grab the top of the pitch trace modulation, and I'm going to flatten things out. I don't want them to be completely flat, but with them all selected, let's have a listen.
Yes, I need somebody like you. Need somebody like you. Need somebody like.
Okay, so that sounds pretty good. And then I just need to know which note that I want to hit. So I have an idea in mind. So we haven't tuned anything yet. This is where we're sitting for the main lead vocal of this chorus.
Guess I need somebody.
Okay, so let's just make a highlighted selection, and then if you hold Alt or Option with multiple events selected or multiple pitch blocks, let's see what this sounds like.
Guess I need somebody, but
Okay, now let's hear it with the lead vocal though, because that's what matters.
guess I need somebody, like
Okay, I'm going to pull this note down a bit, and also we can just kind of flatten this out. The next section is I want to take care of these harmonies.
you.
I'm gonna click the 1 key because the lead is soloed in the background, and we need to land on some pitches that harmonize.
You.
Okay, so this is where we're going. These notes are the ones that we're harmonizing against.
You.
You. Okay, so we're gonna go. This one, I think. Let's play this together now. I'll bring the lead in. We'll go out of full screen. Let's bring the lead in.
You.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. Let's go back into full screen and let's make similar changes to these ones. What about this one?
You.
Okay, so for this, I think that
You.
this one here, if I play the two of these together,
You.
so that one works. And then the end one, I think that's the exact same as the beginning one. Let's go back here. What did we have? We have F sharp to G down to F sharp. So I'm using Shift Command and I'm click holding and dragging. I'll select all three of these, and this is going to be, we can also hold the Alt Option modifier, which will snap to the position. And then these two together, we'll play this in context with the lead vocal.
You.
Okay. I'm pretty happy with that in terms of the way it sounds in general. As a safety net, let me go full screen for a moment. Let's click the L key to just bring ourselves into levels, and let's pull everything that happens after that. Let's just pull the levels 100% down. We'll come out of full screen. So now if we listen to the two of these together, what we should get, we'll click L again, is we should have two vocals that are harmonizing.
Guess I need somebody, like you. Need somebody, like you.
Okay, I need to make an adjustment on this one over here. Let's go back into full screen and let's go back into our tuning mode. We need to pull these notes over here, these ones, we need to pull these up to the same pitch, which we ended up landing on a B4. So we'll click this one, and then it'll be the same thing for these ones over here. So these,
Guess I need somebody, like
but it only matters in terms of how it sounds together.
Guess I need somebody, like you.
This one,
Somebody, like you. Need somebody, like you.
okay, perfect. So at that point, if you just need like one harmony track that you wanted to bring in, you could leave it at that if you wanted to. Let's take a listen in context. And I need to bring this down in terms of level. I need to bring it down a bit. Let's try around -3.6.
Guess I need somebody, like you. Need somebody, like you. Need somebody, like you.
Okay, so that sounds good to me. As like a starting point, there are some things though that we can do to get it to sound better. We took a look at the very beginning of this section. We took a look at adjusting the formant. What I would probably do in this case is make some formant adjustments based on what is needed in context of this whole entire track. So I'm going to go full screen on the harmony, and we can right click and we can go to the adjust and we can edit the shift of formants. From here, we need to make a decision. Do we want to go lower or higher?
Guess I need somebody.
Whoops, I'll make sure that the harmony is selected.
Guess I need somebody, like you.
Did I accidentally somehow wipe out all those changes that I made? I hope not. Let me go back to my timing and pitch.
Again, guess I need somebody.
I think I must have. Let me undo things and let's see if I can come back. Where was I? Where was my starting point? Was here. Let me redo. That looks, no, I'm not sure where I got lost. I think I need to redo these ones though.
Like you. Need somebody, like you.
Okay, I need to bring these ones up. I don't know what happened there. We'll bring these ones up to this pitch and we'll bring these ones up here. And then this, at this point, I want to edit the shift of the formants. And let's take a listen.
Guess I need somebody, like you. Need somebody,
Okay, I'm going to just make a choice to lock down some points. We need to get at least the before and the afters. And if I select all these points, I can grab the formant and I can pull everything down a little bit. And this will now change the sound of this harmony.
Guess I need somebody, like you.
So, right, so undo.
Guess I need somebody.
and redo.
Guess I need some.
It really matters though in terms of how it sounds in context.
Guess I need somebody like you.
We could even have it where these sections have a different Formant offset because we can create these nodes, right? We create these nodes, we come up with something that we're happy with. Now this is, for me, anytime that I create harmonies, I really like to have harmonies, or I like to think to myself, if I recorded this and I was actually doing the vocal production for the session and I recorded this session, I would record those in stereo pairs. So I don't want to have to repeat all that work that I was doing. So what I'll do instead is I'm going to create a doubler, but I already have one track and it's following the timing and we've adjusted the tuning. So we have a harmony that sits well in context. So let's now create a mono doubler and let's just pan these out because that's exactly how I would do this if I recorded this in real time. So I'm going to right click. And actually, we'll make sure that this is selected. We'll click the B key. This time, instead of matching timing, pitch, or level, I'm going to create a doubler. In terms of the actual length, we don't need it for to be the selected audio. We only need it. We only made the changes from here to here. So let's click and drag to make a highlighted range selection. And this will give us now the duration of the doubler that we need. Like I said, it's going to be a doubler. We can zoom in a little bit here. Selected playback range for the preset. I'm going to go with a factory preset, and let's go with, I like mono vocal mild, if I just want a mono doubler preset. Then we just need to set our input. Our input will be the harmony, which is right over here, and then our output, we'll just leave this to automatic. So when we create this new process, now what we've done is we've created an alternate version that has deviations in timing and in pitch of this track. So if we listen to both of these harmony tracks, and we listen to them together, we'll listen to harmony and harmony out.
Guess I need somebody.
Now we just need to pan these out, right? So I'll pan this one hard left, pan this one hard right. If we take this out of solo, we listen to everything together.
Guess I need somebody like you. Need somebody like you. Need somebody like you.
That sounds pretty good. If we wanted to make any tweaks, we could adjust we could make a shift of the formants. We could come back into our adjust layer and we could edit the shift of formants and we could tweak this if we wanted to. So that is one approach that we have. And with that approach, we have basically, we've just created a vocal harmony, and then we're randomizing it and we're making some changes in terms of getting the pitch. We can tune it as aggressive or as loose as we want. And then we're using the formant shift to either make it sound way more natural or way more artificial, according to whatever we want. And then the last step is just creating a mono doubler, which gives us a stereo version of that. Now, but like I said, at the end of the day, if we play the lead and the harmony against each other, at the end of the day, these are going to be, in terms of their timing, they're 100%, they're
Guess I need
exact.
somebody like.
This has been panned out hard left, but if we return this back to where it was.
Guess I need somebody like you.
There is one other approach that you could take, though, and it would potentially offer even more flexibility. I would potentially consider highlighting these formant shifts that we've created. I could right-click and delete these. Maybe I want to leave this as the starting point for the tuning. I'm completely happy with that. Let's open up this doubler process that we have. Let's change it from mono vocal mild. Let's go to our factory presets and let's change it to stereo vocal mild. Watch what happens with this waveform when I change to stereo vocal mild. This is now going to change into a stereo doubler output. Now in this case, we only used the harmony track that we manually created. We only use that as a starting point, but our end goal is that we actually use this track.
Guess I need somebody
We actually use that as the actual starting point. Now, let me take this out for a moment.
Guess I need somebody like you.
We have our tuning that we need to adjust. This was at right, so it followed the tuning.
Guess I need somebody.
The other thing that we could do, though, is we can do the form and adjust. We could actually make something different. So channel 1 is our left side of the doubler. We could say, all right, what's our average delay? 25 might be a bit much. So maybe we can bring this down a little bit. So let's go to we'll go to 13. And then the formant shift, maybe this one is low. And then on the right channel, let's go to, what is it at, 34? That's a lot. Let's bring that up a bit. And then on the right side, maybe our formant is going to be high. And then this offers like a new style of a doubler.
Guess I need somebody.
And then together with the track,
Guess I need somebody
and then in context of everything.
Guess I need somebody like you.
And then in that case, we actually don't need this harmony track. We can mute it.
Guess I need somebody like you. Need somebody like you.
Now, these types of things, when you do them properly, at least in my opinion, if you taper them into the mix, they can add a big difference. And if they're not being listened to under a microscope or in isolation, they're a beautiful layer that we can add. So like I would potentially even pull that down a little bit further, maybe like -5 or 6. Now, watch what happens when I mute this in and out. I'm going to engage my loop mode, and let's play.
Yes, I need somebody, body like you. Need somebody, body like you. Need somebody, body like you. Yes, I need somebody, body like you. Need somebody, body like you.
So at the end, I think that's a great sounding result in terms of creating a vocal harmony that is realistic sounding. It's a really good starting point, and it's transparent. And if you want it to be the opposite of transparent, you could make it as untransparent as you want. Okay, so we are now at 1:49. I'm going to log back in here. Sorry, I have a question. This is from 12 minutes ago. I apologize. Can I press on Revoice and it starts playback in DAW, or is it in sync playback? Okay. Let's take a moment to talk about the new Revoice Pro Link options. And also, I need to make mention of something. At the time that I'm doing this live stream, Revoice is on sale for, this is the best price that you're going to be able to get in terms of the sale cost. I'm not sure what the other sales are, but I know at the moment, and if I'm saying this wrong, the folks at SynchroArts, please correct me, but at the time that I'm doing this video, I believe it is 33% off for a new, like if you're buying it outright on either a new purchase or a cross grade, meaning that you already have another product and you also want to purchase this. And then upgrades, I think, are 50% off. Please, somebody quote me if I didn't get that right, but I'm pretty sure that's it. I'm trying to read some of these comments that are happening in YouTube as well. Did the artist's name get mentioned? She's an artist by the name of Jantine. I love her stuff. She's incredibly talented. Perhaps, I'm not sure if there are links available that can be put in the chat. I'm not sure, but I know her name is Jantine. I just don't know what her full name or her full artist name is. I apologize. She is amazing though. Let me see. That sounds ominous. I sure want to fiddly things to work through. Okay, it looks like we have a little bit of back and forth that's going on between some support and some people who are doing comment. Okay, so yes, that is correct. 50% off upgrades, 30% off cross grades and new licenses. I often get asked by a lot of people. I have the pleasure of, because of what I do in terms of working with some different companies like SynchroArts, I often get asked by some people, sometimes people who are extremely heavy hitters. They will ask me, what's the difference between Vocaline, or I have Repitch, or do I need Vocaline if I have Revoice Pro and everything like that? Here's what I say. This for me is a very specialized tool. We can do a lot of stuff. If I need to do a really quick vocal, I'm doing a mix and I get sent something and I listen to something and there's a pre-chorus that's sitting on a track and it's out. It's out a little bit and it's out enough that it bothers me, and I know that I can make it sound perfect but not overly processed, and that the artist will love it and it'll be better for the final thing. I'll use Repitch. I'll pull it up. I'm in an ARA DAW like Studio One. I'll pull it up, edit with Repitch, boom, make the change, render it. It gets rendered into the file. Also, even potentially if there's like Sibilance stuff and I don't want to mess with my clip gain, I will use Repitch. I also said if I need to do something basic where it's like one snippet of a section where I have like a section of a lead vocal and then maybe I have some doubles or unisons and I need to tune those quickly and I need to time align things, then I could potentially use Repitch into Vocaline with SynchroLink, and that's Vocaline Ultra. And if it's tuning or if it's timing or timing and tuning. But the minute it starts getting complicated, and when I say complicated, I don't just mean like 4 tracks. I actually mean that we're looking at 4 tracks and potentially 6 different places down the timeline. I need to open up or at least demonstrate. Yeah, let's take if we take a look at this, we have different amounts of tracks in terms of, in this case, there's a lead vocal, a male lead vocal. The instrumental is coming across the board, but in this case, there's a high vocal harmony. If there's different tracks that are already set up and there's different things that I need to send over, it could be a set of unisons, it could be a set of doubles, or if I need to create a double, if I need to artificially create a double or anything like that, I'm in Revoice. Because I have to be honest with you, being able to see things, being able to solo these individual tracks out, like I said, I always think it's a good idea to bring my stereo instrumental in. That's really good, regardless of whether you're in an ARA DAW or not. I'm always going to use Revoice because this is really snappy in terms of being its own standalone program. I set it to the same main output interface that I'm using. You can create groups. We have so many ways that we can streamline the whole process, and in general it can be tied to your DAW session and it can be recalled until you get it to the point where everybody's happy. Also, if I want to print something to send off, even if my audio is sitting in Revoice, if I'm in an ARA link plugin, or if I'm in a regular link plugin, Revoice Pro Link or ARA, I can do a bounce of the mix and I can go through all the signal chain in terms of my effect sends and all of my real-time plugins that are sitting in my track. So I'm always going to use Revoice. My last stage will always be rendering. There was another question. I want to make sure that I answer that. There was one other thing. Can I press on Revoice and it starts playback on DAW, or is it sync and playback? Okay, there's different ways that it works depending on which DAW that you're working in. If you're in an ARA DAW, you can press play in your DAW and you're hearing everything that's playing back from Revoice in your timeline. That being said, you can also set up the Revoice Pro Monitor plugin, where this is an option that we have right over here, where as long as you have Revoice Pro Link active and you have, Revoice Pro Monitor is here. I'm sorry, I apologize. You need to be seeing my screen too. In the bottom right over here, we have the option to connect audio output from this window to the Revoice Pro Monitor plugin. If you play back audio from your DAW and you instantiate an instance of Revoice Pro Monitor, you can have it such that your audio can stream into, like they can talk to each other, but you have to make sure that you would then mute any track so that they're not doubling up in terms of playback. We do have some awesome new integration though too with the VST version of the new Revoice Pro Link plugin. We have like real-time streaming, which was previously only possible with ARA plugins, where if you play back in your DAW's timeline, which like I said, could be through all your different compressors, EQs, delays, anything, then you would also be hearing you have the ability to play back in your DAW, but you're playing the rendered or the processed outputs of Revoice Pro, but you're playing them in your DAW's timeline according to your signal chain. So that's super useful. We didn't used to be able to do that, so that's awesome. I want to kind of open this up to one-on-one questions. I think I'm pretty much done in terms of like hammering through everything that I could possibly imagine. I'm going to go back to the live chat here. Also, I'm going to monitor some questions from Jordan. Tried the new version, dropped it on 20 tracks in Studio One. Apart from the first 2 tracks, had to manually add each track one at a time. Is there a way to add multiple output tracks to get name from DAW? Yes, you multi-select all of the events that you want. You drag an instance of Revoice Pro Link from the Studio One editor, and then you click capture on one, and it will capture all of them across, and all of the events will come in. Or if you're using the integration menu that we have in Studio One, which is Edit with Revoice Pro, if you do that, it's going to use the Revoice Pro Link legacy, and then it will automatically capture everything. Let me see. Hope tried new version. Marcus, what's your original beta demo when transferring audio into your DAW? I'm using Studio One. Tracks don't disappear from Revoice, but are rendered or bounced in the DAW. There's going to be an update that has to happen on the PreSonus side of things in terms of how that process. Okay, so this is a very specific question, and I think it only applies to Studio One, because in Studio One, the custom menu integration that exists is using Revoice Pro Link legacy version. So that's the Revoice Pro Link plugin from Revoice Pro 4. This is a very edge case scenario, but basically what that means is the concept of rendering the results of Revoice Pro into the regions that they used to disappear. As soon as you rendered it, it would remove itself from the Revoice Pro session that was created. This is something that has to be looked at once we get the new custom integration that works with Studio One. This will have to be looked at. So that's kind of like a edge case. Is there anything missing from Revoice that others have? Let me see. I don't think so. I think that Revoice has potentially more than any other manual pitch plugin would have. We have so many different things. It used to be that Revoice was just like we could grab the timing, or we could grab the timing and the pitch. And then we had, there was always little quirks and little things that would happen if the regions weren't the exact amount. And then we got Smart Align, and then that cured 99.999% of any problems you ever had with Revoice or Vocaline. Smart Align took care of. Then the other problem was that you could only use timing and pitch. And now we got that. So Revoice has all of that. Plus it has the ability to tune. It has these different ways of tuning with the shaper tool, with the draw tool, with the smooth join tool, with cutting, with just a general way, the control points and being able to hover your mouse over and kind of plow through something, center notes tool, correct drift tool. When you combine all those together, and once you start getting acclimated to using it, you can fly through tuning, and the results they're amazing, and they can be as transparent or as aggressive as you want. So I don't think that this is missing anything that others have. In fact, I'd say it has potentially way, way, way more. Let me see. And guys, that's my honest opinion. Yes, I do videos. I demo this product. I create content for this product, and I do live streams, but I use this product. I use Repitch, I use Revoice Pro, I use Vocaline Ultra. That's what I use for all of my tuning. I have so for the past, I think it's been a year and a half now, 100% I'm on SynchroArts products. I still have Melodyne installed in case I need to open something. I don't use it anymore. I still think it's a great product, but for me, Repitch, Vocaline, and Revoice Pro are just killing it, and they're all integrated, and they do everything that I could ever imagine. So I don't find the need, and I think they sound better personally, was my opinion. Does Revoice include everything in the others? Not using legacy. I loaded vocals from Studio One exactly, and you return in the same way as you. Okay, so that's something I think we should probably take that over to the beta group, so we'll get this ironed out. This is the very first release version that we are. We're on Revoice Pro. This is the first version that came out in terms of when it was released. So we may have these little quirks or little glitches that need to be ironed out. That's completely normal. But I think we could probably track down those things in the beta. Thanks. This session was extremely helpful. Love the new features of Revoice Pro. Thank you. I'm glad that you found it useful. Super hard to go through all of this stuff. I could easily do an 8-hour stream, but I'm trying to condense it and show stuff that's useful. Also want this to be available and chaptered so that people could iron out or hop into a very specific moment. Also, we do have a ton of content that's coming that's very specific deep dives into things like creating a match process, working with SmartPitch, creating a doubler, like different videos that cover anywhere from like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, up to 10 or 12 minutes that cover these things, kind of spotlight on them in very specific detail. So keep your eye on the emails that are coming in the SynchroArts email newsletters. Also keep your eye on the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to that, and on socials. And also, guys, 33% off for cross grades and upgrades. 33% off for cross grades. I think it's 50% off for upgrades and 33% off if you're buying this brand new. I want to see if there's any other questions. This is incredibly helpful, and I absolutely plan to acquire in January. Yes, this latest of Revoice seems like it really covers all the bases and the most intuitive. But here's what I'll say, people. If you think about Revoice in terms of you need to make a basic investment of time, I think with the free content that's available on the YouTube videos right now, in terms of getting started with your DAW, master your DAW in terms of getting audio sent to Revoice and then getting audio sent back to your DAW. Once you have that, if you dedicate minimum 2 hours, maximum 10 hours over 1 to 2 months, 2 to 10 hours, which is not a lot. If you seriously dedicate that time and you have some of these tutorials open that we're talking about, these deep dives that are coming, you put a playlist together, or I'm sure SynchroArts will do this for you on your behalf. If you spend the time and you learn these things and you go by some of the tips that I've given you today, naming your tracks, making sure your track headers are out, understanding how you can, where the outputs are created, understanding how to get to the tuning, understanding how to create a doubler, all these, tweaking the presets, everything. You are going to, and you start thinking to yourself, this is a standalone application and I need to put a little bit of time invested into, it's going to pay back 100-fold. Once you start learning how to use it, once you get through the learning hurdle, you're fine. You're going to be laughing. Let's see if there's any more questions here. Thanks, Marcus. Going over new features in detail was a delight and helpful. Great work. Thank you very much. Video covering post-production use would be great. Okay, that's good to know. Make sure the folks at SyncRarts know that. Could you do a really extreme example of a pitch shift? I think in terms of for adjusting, in terms of tuning, if I ever did an extreme adjustment of a pitch shift, I would never do that on its own. I would do that, I would add a Formant shift in there as well. I think I went through some of those examples. If ever you adjust like the pitch and it goes up like 5 or 6 semitones, I would then offset that with the Formant change to offset that if I wanted it to be natural. Or if I wanted it to be the opposite, then I wouldn't care, or I would potentially add a Formant change in the opposite direction. Thanks, Marcus. Great video as always. Picked up a few great tips. Awesome. I sincerely hope that there's nothing that I forgot. So I think that's it for these comments here. We still have 99 people in the chat. Let me make sure. Okay. I'm just reading some comments here from Jordan. Okay, looks like I've covered all questions. So like, I think for me, like I said, I'll just reiterate this. For me, Revoice has a very specific, place in my toolkit. I think of it as, it is my final layer of polish. And it is the thing that I absolutely 100% need to use whenever things get complicated and whenever I have multiple things that I need to do on multiple tracks and in multiple areas of a timeline. Quick stuff, like I said, quickly tuning a verse or a pre-chorus, or if you're working on the fly as you're going, opening up Repitch and even using Vocaline to, get your unisons in tune or in time or whatever the case is, harmonies, that's great. But the minute it gets complicated for me, or the minute I need to, if I get hired to produce vocals, if I get hired on a song, I'm tracking engineer, I'm vocal producer, I'm doing time alignment, I'm doing tuning, and most of the time by that stage, I'm usually mixing the song. If I've gotten through that many stages with an artist, usually if I get a new client of somebody that I work with in terms of tuning and time alignment, I don't usually lose them. They're usually very happy with the results. I will hop on a Zoom call. I will pull up Revoice and open it up with them, talk about things, let them listen to the doublers. If they say like, oh, I should have tracked this, I'll create it. Artists, they go insane when they see it. When they hear you creating doubles, when you need to manufacture a harmony, things like that. For me, this is, like I said, it's anything past a couple tracks. Anything past a couple tracks and anything where it gets complicated, it's Revoice. And then, like I say, I think of this no different than I'm familiar with Pro Tools. I'm familiar with Studio One, Logic Pro. Studio One and Pro Tools are, Studio One is my main DAW. Pro Tools I started in 2000. I still know it very well. Logic I can get around with, but I think of this as just another program. I put in the time to learn it properly. And then once you understand it, once you know how to do, you just think of what you need to do and you do it. And the results are incredible. And it's much easier to do everything in real time and have it sitting in a real time state and then being able to render it back or being able to go back to something. And it's never going to be cheaper in terms of the time to purchase. It's never going to be cheaper than it is right now in terms of the sale prices. So this is the time. I'm not 100% sure when the sale ends, but definitely this is the time to pick it up. If you bought Revoice Pro with an automatic upgrade to Revoice Pro 5, I'm not sure. SyncRarts. Marcus, way off topic, but has anyone else ever stated that you bear in a mild resemblance to the brilliant Laszlo from film? No, people usually tell me I look like the guy from The Walking Dead, or who played Sam and Dean's dad on the Winchesters for Supernatural. You simply purchase the product and select upgrade. Okay. Guys, if there's any other questions, I think there's a 20-second delay, or 20 or 30 seconds, but I'm going to stay on here for a little bit, and then I think I'm pretty much ready to call it. But if there's any other questions, if there's anything I can answer, if there's anything that's not entirely clear or I could have done better, please feel free to shoot me a message. I'll stay on here for a little bit, and we'll see where we are. I'm pretty sure I've covered it. So Revoice Pro is one-stop shopping. You are a mad genius with this. Thank you, 11th Hour Sound. It is not that I'm a genius. It's just that I put in the time to learning it. And once you learn it, it's voodoo. And it is a license to get away with murder. It is a license to perform miracles. And I've had to perform miracles. I've had to perform miracles where things weren't sung, needed to be sung, and they needed to sound perfect. And I had to make it work, and I can always make things work. Okay. Looking like we don't have any more questions. Okay, everybody. Well, I guess I want to take the time to say thank you. Like I said, keep in mind that we do have a bunch of content rolling out. I think right now we have the getting started videos. Watch those. Get your DAW workflow bang on. Like, get your DAW workflow seamless. Make sure that you know exactly how to send things over and how to return them. If you're in Pro Tools, spend time with your Quick APT, your Quick Doubler, your Revoice Pro Link. If you're in Ableton, try the new Revoice Pro Link with the real-time streaming that happens. It's awesome. If you're in Studio One, Logic, regardless, know how to send it over, send it back, and also know how to render it. And then use a save as in between if you ever need to give yourself like a breadcrumb where you need to go back. Use a save as, create a separate session, do something, save a Revoice Pro document, put it in your session folder. You can always recall things. But keep your eye out. We do have a bunch of deep dive videos. They're all coming down the line. They're going to be out very soon. With the time off that is coming at the time that I'm doing this video, hopefully people have some time to actually spend investing in learning this amazing product. Once you start using it, once you start using the levels, this, that, all these tools combined, you know how to recognize certain issues and what tool to use to tackle with them. It's going to be awesome in terms of what it will do to your vocal production and your workflow in general. It's absolutely brilliant. Okay, I think we're good. Can you put a link to your website for tuning I'm not sure if this is a question directly to me. Can you put a link to your website for tuning services, etc.? You can find me on, if you go to YouTube and you type in my name, Marcus, Marcus, and Huyskens, Huyskens, you'll find Marcus Huyskens music. You'll find my YouTube channel. That was amazing. Back in the dark ages, early 90s, used to rep a workstation recording system called our program WordFit, which seems like the great granddaddy of Revoice Pro. Oh, Revoice Pro is deeply rooted in the lineage of the infancy of time compression and expansion. Okay. Hey, nice presentation. One question: why the level wave don't animate with level changes up and down? It does. Only when we move. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, when you make a move, when you change the level in Revoice, or Repitch for that matter, you make the change first, and then after you change it, it'll show, like if you move it down -3, as soon as you go to -3 and let go, then you see it snap down. I don't know if that's going to change or not. I can't really comment on that, but I understand what you're saying. Please add videos for working in Reaper. Thanks and happy holidays. I've used it for years and wondering about how the time compression will be affected. The time compression expansion in SynchroArts products are second to none. They're the best of the best. They've literally been around since the dawn of time when this was done in digital audio workstations. I think my first license, if I went into my iLock, is probably Vocaline Project LE, which came with a Pro Tools version 5 license, I think. It's Paul Svensson, indeed. Purchased and very... Okay. Okay, for Mario, please reach out to the folks at SynchroArts, to the support, so we can help out with any issues that you'll be having. That would be time compression as an overall treatment. Okay, I think we are good. I can't really think of anything extra that I can add to this in terms of making this presentation any better. So I think at this point, I've spoken enough. My stomach is growling, and I appreciate everybody's time, and we will catch you in the next video. So if I don't have an opportunity to hop on any more lives or anything, everybody have a fantastic holidays, and enjoy your time off. Spend some time with Revoice, spend some time with the SynchroArts products, grab the deals while they are still available, and I will catch you in the next video. Cheers.